United States doing Israel's war, and that's what the situation is. So that having been said, first of all, how you doing, brother Apple Agnostics?
Oh, I'm good, man. Mr. Aki, yeah, I'm here.
Student X, how you doing, sir? And again, just because we disagree, we brothers and respectful on this show. Sometimes it's not respectful on the other show. So I got Mr. Floyd X in the wing, so I'm just putting that out there. But the bottom line is we're very respectful on this show. So what's going on with you, Mr. Student X?
Yeah, no, we're respectful yet passionate, and I'm not like what some call the lunatic left. Is that just because you don't agree with me, and you don't share my exact vantage point on everything, I'm not canceling you. I'm not wishing you were dead. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. That's not what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean? So. But like I said, we might have heated discord. You might hear some F-bombs slip up here and there. You know what I mean? But it's love, nothing but love. For our people and the people. And each other.
Yeah, I caught myself. You said the lunatic left. I almost said the R right, but you can't say. But you know.
Well, what's the R?
I ain't trying to get me counsel, buddy.
Did I get you cancer? They call it Benjamin Netanyahu. He called the woke right, which is REICH. You know what I mean? That's who he was calling the right. So I don't know if that's what you were referring to.
No, I was talking about the special needs right, but still. Anyway, so Student X, go ahead. You laid the graphic. You made an argument. You said that Charlie Kirk was the first casualty. Explain that.
Well, no. So in terms of this, the topic, that's what we're here for. But on the last show, we were transitioning from the last show, and then Afro had asked something. Well, then who is the killer? You know what I mean? So I didn't know we want to just finish that part off. You know what I mean? And then we'll go ahead and get to our deconstruct. On the point that I'm saying, which is nuclear war is imminent. Prepare yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just answer quickly. Tyler Robinson. I'll say let's talk about the nuclear situation then. So about the nuclear, I don't know if you're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean it was Afro asked the question, you know what I mean? And so, but no, I'm saying that the killer is still at large and that Tyler Robinson is an innocent patsy. It was a professional hit. That's what I'm saying.
An innocent patsy that your father got you to turn yourself in. An innocent patsy that your youth pastor got you to turn yourself in. I mean, innocent patsy that your lover is basically, testifying and corroborating all this stuff. You're a patsy who's got all this Reddit information and stuff like that. All these things, all your little chats, all your information, pages and pages and pages of evidence to suggest one thing. And everybody's caught up on this whole notion of, the forensics thing was inconclusive. It was inconclusive. It was not conclusive one way or the other. So the bottom line is there's a lot of evidence. Whether he actually did it or not, I could never begin to testify to that. But I mean, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he was the guy.
May I say something? Really I want to sum what if Super Next, if I'm right, you said just for clarity that Israel made the call, right? Netanyahu or somebody in Israel made the call.
I'm saying that absolutely the state of Israel has a role in this execution and assassination.
So
that's my position.
I got you, but that position doesn't necessarily exclude Charlie Kirk from being the person who actually pulled the trigger. I mean, both things can exist. They're not mutually existent. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. Both things can be true.
I'm not saying they are. I think that's a total separate issue. You're right.
So I just want to say that. And for me personally, I believe Tyler Kirk. I mean, I don't have evidence that Israel. Tyler Kirk. I don't have any evidence to believe that Israel did it because the reason I say this is because U.S. does things like this all the time. And as far as Tyler Robertson, I believe that, I can't just dismiss, the text messages, the DNA evidence, the video, the physical evidence. I can't just say that was fabricated because once you go there, you're not simplifying the story. You're kind of complicating the story, and then you have less evidence to support it. So I believe when you reject the straightforward, simple explanation, in favor of like a more extraordinary explanation, then I think the onus is on you to have, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I think it would be a lot to have all those internal consistencies with 3 different police jurisdictions. So many humans make mistakes. That couldn't, it just doesn't make sense. So that's the reason why I believe Tyler Robinson did it. Pull the trigger.
So we should do a
great point. Great point though that he still could have been part of the conspiracy though.
Yeah,
he could have been triggered.
I mean, not really. Just because of the gun itself. The gun itself was not zeroed in. There was no recon, done prior to this at all by Tyler Robinson. He had never gone to the school before. Again, there's just so much. But yeah, if we want to make a show out of this, we should. Because it's easy to show that this was a professional hit. That Tyler Robinson is an innocent patsy, and that he's being set up.
But let me just say, I think also too that like the recon. I think when you listen to the text, he shows. I think he did say he went to the area prior. Yeah, and he sound very well, knowledgeable of riflery.
Bro, the text was ridiculous, bro. We liking it to AI and something that was not even in someone his age and how he would text. Clearly the text messages people are not,
okay, let me just say really quick though, just to your point, because I'm not necessarily saying I disagree with your total theory. It's just that as far as who was the killer, the other point you made about the ballistics, the forensic stuff, not necessarily matching, but not enough of it to verify that was the rifle used. But that doesn't confirm the Israeli theory at all, or doesn't say that just because you're trying to find inconsistencies that are not really inconsistencies.
Not true.
That doesn't.
But right. improbabilities. Yeah. So yes, and that is the nature of the basically conspiracy. Again, conspiracies happen. I don't mean to shut it away when I say that. I'm just saying that it's a convoluted answer. And again, I subscribe to Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is most likely, probably more likely to be the one. At least it's a more responsible position to take early on. Again, I don't know. I can't tell you if Tyler Robinson was the person that did it. I can't tell you what was the motivation. I'm just saying that there's tons of evidence that suggested it. And the evidence that I've heard that's to refute this has been absolute leaps of faith. You're taking real improbabilities that are not, but then there's literally videos proving how this thing that you're saying could never happen actually could happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are way more videos that show the exact opposite and way more.
It doesn't matter. All you need to show is that it can. All you need to show is that it can happen. It doesn't matter if something happens 70% of the time.
Unfortunately, that's not true, because in defense, when this goes to court, the core principle here, as you should know, is the burden of proof rests entirely on the prosecution. The prosecutor of the state of Utah has the absolute burden to show that every element of the charge that he will be crowned with is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I can tell you right now that already,
every
is
element.
not going to be achieved.
No. That's a misstatement of the law. All you need is 12 jurors to agree beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is guilty. You don't have to accept every single bit of evidence that the prosecution puts out there. The prosecution is going to selectively put whatever they're going to out there they think is going to think, but you don't have to buy into all of it to convict somebody. That's not how that works.
Not at all. But I didn't say that either. You know what I mean? I said
you said have to buy into every
the burden of proof, and they're going to show that beyond a reasonable doubt that Tyler Robinson committed this crime. And I said from the gate, and then we're going to find out, potentially, let's see, Epstein, is that, he will walk, from this. One way or another, he will walk. In terms of he will be free, he will not go to jail behind this. That they will not win this case against him.
Can I just say this though, really quick? What do you? Because obviously none of us know, right? But I believe strongly that he did it because of the evidence. But I'm open to the idea that he didn't. I'm not a juror. I'm not being presented with all the evidence, but are you open to the idea that he even did it? Or are you totally?
Of course. I was open from the beginning, you know what I mean? But then as this began unfolding, and then the information from the only person who was doing the investigation, it was actually, you know, and then began to share with the public.
Who was the only person?
Owens, that so much began to become uncovered and came to light. And then we started seeing how different political figures and others begin to try to, you know, answer those the skepticism that was out there based on what was being presented, you know. And like I said, when you add all this up, you know, it's just like I remember the prosecutors for OJ. They said they had a mountain of evidence to convict this man, but it ended up being an anthill, is what Johnny Cochran said. You know, and the same is true in this case right here. There is no mountain of evidence showing that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk, but there is a mountain of evidence.
There's no evidence. You said there's no evidence
and questions that remain unanswered. You know, that is showing that this is not our guy, and that this was a professional assassin that killed Charlie. And there is plenty of scenarios, you know, and facts that point in a direction that the majority of the public, you know, who's studying this, you know, is coming to realize. And many of them were skeptics. They were like, man, there's no way, how, you know, and now they're coming around, you know, and things have changed, you know. And then simultaneously, you're seeing this anti-Zionist movement taking place in America, and the two are connected and related, you know, for sure, you know. So, you know, but like I said, if you guys want to do a show on this, you know, I got a lot of information here, you know what I mean, you know, and
again,
you know,
I will say this. Let's pivot. Let's talk about the nuclear thing. But you just said there was no evidence, and I'm just saying that maybe you don't understand what evidence is, because literally, his father, if his father testified that his son confessed to him, that is evidence. That's not necessarily proof.
You're doing all type of speculation. The only thing that we know is that the father, you know, you're saying turned them in, but that's not how I see it. I see it to where if I'm an attorney or a father, you know, and I find out that there's someone's looking for my son, then instead of having a SWAT team come in the middle of the goddamn night and kidnap him, or you're walking down the street and then, you know,
they didn't know.
To be apprehended, you ready to be brought in and come in voluntarily and deal with it like that, and that's what happened. There was no confession. There was a confession, then that we would have a strong video, you know, evidence that shows a confession.
You're presuming that they're not putting that out there. Again, they can get statements. Maybe Tyler Robinson is not cooperating. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing. But they're saying that all these other people are cooperating. So that usually suggests that they got signed statements already from those people involved. That was the original story. Whether that's the truth or not, I don't know. But I'm just saying that if they have, and again, until I see the evidence, I really can't tell you. If they have signed estimates, if they have signed statements that he confessed to the father, if he whatever, that's evidence. It's not proof, but it's evidence.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm surprised that you two. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, because for me, and the reason why I lean on the side of Tyler Robinson actually pulling the trigger is because the level of organization and complexity and coordination that it would take to fabricate all the evidence that they have, like the DNA evidence. So they have somebody inside the lab, or someone is secretly going in, who's at the higher, you know, 3 different jurisdictions to have DNA evidence.
Wait, stay right there. It was his rifle. No one's debating that. It was his rifle. The gun that they're saying did it. That was his rifle. So of course his DNA's on it. But there was other DNA on it. It was also
found at the site of the crime, near the area. So I'm saying, like, also the text messages. The text messages are consistent with the times and what was actually happening in the area as they are timestamped. So it's just so much like that would have to happen in order to coordinate.
No, I mean, unfortunately, they're not though. They're not, you know, and like I said, so
you don't know. They're not going to put that information out there.
Investigation from day one to the T, you know, and look at what's been being put out there. You know what I mean? You know, then like I said, there really is a mountain of evidence that supports the alternative, you know, or the conspiracy theory here, you know, in regards to Tyler Robinson being the man. He's a patsy. In fact, what's wild is that this whole situation, how much it lines up, you know, with the JFK assassination. You know what I mean? You know, and then like I said, there's so many. I read off so much to you earlier. You haven't addressed any of those things.
No.
You were asking me the question earlier about foreign involvement. You know what I mean? There was so much there. You know what I mean? So
I don't mean. Hold on. I don't mean to cut you. I want to say RFK though, because he was killed by Saran. Anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but still, yeah, JFK, JFK, not RFK.
RFK what did I say? I didn't say JFK.
You said JFK, but I was saying RFK because he was killed by Saran, the Iranian, is making the connection.
Oh yeah.
But still, again, and again, like I said, I don't want it to be too much on there. Let's pivot to other stuff because you said we didn't address it. I would disagree on that, but let's go ahead. I want you to make your case, Student X. You got the floor. You said that we are headed for nuclear war. So go ahead, brother. Explain why you think that's the case. If we stop you, we're only going to stop you to understand what it is you're saying. We don't want you to build.
I'm allowing myself to be stopped because we got to unpack this. I can't. Like we were on that last show, and like just on that Charlie thing, I had to run down a whole bunch of facts, but it didn't give you guys a chance to address any of them. So first, let's establish the facts. You know what I mean? So and this is going to support my claim that nuclear war is imminent. So let's start with fact number one. Iran is winning the war. I agree with that. How about you, Afro-Gnosis? You agree with that?
I don't know, but I could.
Go ahead.
I mean, with the Strait of Hormuz, that's where the war is right now. So at this moment,
they're not. America's not taking that.
Well, let's expand on it. So what I mean by
not extracting a victory. America is not extracting a legitimate victory out of this war. I don't. Yeah. So there's no argument there, for me.
I don't know because also considering the motive behind the war. For me, the war is to weaken China.
Okay. But China is going to basically the strait's going to be based. China's still going to get their stuff. I mean, this is like a temporary weekend.
They're still getting it. I think they're still getting it.
Yeah. So Student X, go ahead. So we agree with that position.
Okay. So already we're agreeing that Israel and that America is not winning. They're not having their objectives, met. And that Iran.
What do you think their objectives? Student X, what do you think their objectives are?
Well, like I said, no one knows what the objectives are because they haven't been stated and they're ever changing. You know what I mean? At the end of the day,
they say stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon. That's one stated objective.
But then the contradiction is that the nuclear weapons program was completely eliminated, annihilated.
Obliterated.
There's nothing to see here. We hit all the sites and everything, so there is no nuclear program, right? And then more recently, when you start looking at things, then it turned into be it was more about the ballistic missile program. They want Iran, and now we see why. You got to end that missile ballistic program you guys have. You're doing too much. Type of situation. So I think that is a good segue to let's jump into the we could jump into the plan, the peace plan, if you will. Like what Iran.
Before you do that, Afro-Agnostic, were you about to say something that you?
I like where you brought up the stated objectives and then the ulterior motive, which we don't necessarily know. But another stated objective was regional stability. That was another, regional stability, which is vague and ambiguous. But, we know that regional stability involved the United States having domination via Israel in that area of the world.
I agree with that, Student X. Go ahead. What were you about to say? What further were you saying? I didn't mean to take you off your plane. I'm just, we're just trying to make sure we understand as we go along.
Step by step. Because sometimes when you get developed and you go on and on, we can't address the steps.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I like is breaking down. Just
I appreciate Student X. So go ahead, brother.
Word. Okay, so it sounds like in terms of being on the same page as far as Iran has the upper hand right now. We agree on that. And that right there. In and of it by itself, it doesn't mean that, that you immediately switch, you're going to nuclear, but, that is a contributing factor. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So now next, let's look at Iran. So the key thing being right now, so like I said, the contradictions are there, right? I'll argue that, that going back to that first point is that because Trump is saying that America is winning the war, automatically the opposite is true, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's yet another way, you know, and the key to understand that things aren't going as well for America as we want. You know, we didn't even mention, you know, the generals, you know, that were let go recently too, you know, within the last, you know, couple of days, right? You know, so, you know, we have a changing, you know, a battle plan, a changing objective, change in leadership. Now let's go to Iran momentarily. So Iran, one of the key issues they're saying is that the 60% enriched uranium, right? So let's just say that America now, they find out that they didn't annihilate everything and that they still have their 60% enriched uranium, right? So Iran, they're saying that.
And quick, a little side note: how did it get to 60%? Because I remember when the deal was in place, it didn't get beyond like 3.7 or something like that, whatever.
Yeah. So you're saying how did it get there? Well, I mean, clearly they enriched it, but the question is why, right?
Well,
and so what happened was
once the deal got ripped up and there was nobody, no supervision, no checks and balances, no whatever, and really no motivation to endure to basically follow anything, that since there was no agreement in place, this was ripped up. You know, they're pursuing their own interests. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So clearly it was a bargaining chip. It was definitely a bargaining chip without any doubt, you know, from Iran's position. And so if there's disagreement there, it doesn't necessarily, you know, take away or add to, you know, my position in terms of nuclear war is imminent. The main thing right now is, you know, if we believe that there's still 60% enriched uranium around, and you know, and the United States wants that, you know, wants it accounted for, because they know that you know is, you know, is something that could be enriched further and made into nuclear weapons, you know, then, you know, that would be, you know, a key reason, you know, for, you know, their aggressiveness. You know, is that fair to conclude?
I mean, that's the position that they're taking.
Yeah, I'm saying America. I mean, they're engaged in this and they're risking all that they're risking. So, you know, they haven't officially came out and said it because they said they destroyed it. But you know, the 60% enriched uranium, they want that accounted for.
Now they're just saying it's buried and they can't get to it. Before it was obliterated. They're at least now conceding that obliteration means that it's your ability to get
right,
to it.
Right. So they're saying that it could be alive, but just not accessible. So but the bottom line is, America is saying Iran has a 60% uranium, and we want it accounted for. All right, you know, so that's a big reason. So, but the thing is that Iran's leadership, they are the key leadership, directly have told individuals that they're not giving up that 60% enriched uranium, not now, not ever. You know what I mean? You know, and that they're prepared to the end. And so, and what that means is that Iran, you know, they have been planning for this war for quite a long time. So they dug themselves in and they came up with an extensive war plan. And people think that these are just, you know, dumb individuals. These are some of the most advanced scientists and mathematical minds that we have on the planet. Just to let you know, their civilization has been around for, you know, a millennia. You know what I mean? You know, not just 250 years, right? You know, and so this stockpile is the way they're looking at it. Iranians is that it's essential to their preparedness, because if Israel uses nuclear weapons against Iran, they need to have the ability to respond in kind, because Iran has dug themselves in such a way that they can withstand multiple nuclear blasts, you know, throughout their countries. Right, they have a big country, so you can't just destroy the whole country, you know. Nor would, you know, I don't think the whole world will allow that. It just doesn't be saturated, you know, with nuclear, you know, missiles, you know what I mean. You know, but you know, nonetheless, is that, you know, Iran is saying that, you know, since we know that we could endure this blast, then we want to have the ability to then, after being hit within the next week or two, to be able to deliver strikes ourselves. So they're not going to give that up now. You know what I mean? Why are they not going to give it up? Because there's no trust in negotiating with the United States. Why? Well, the last two negotiations, mid-negotiations, which this is literally a war crime, the negotiators were killed. They were killed. Right?
And there was that bomb. And then there was the bomb. I said, and then there was the bomb that was dropped.
Right. You know what I mean?
So yeah.
Okay, so are we okay with everything that we're talking about so far?
Well, I would say that to follow up the fact that we know who's in the winning position right now as far as the Strait or Moose, because that's to me where it is. I think we've already agreed. International bodies have agreed that they have 60% enriched uranium. My question, and then they're not going to give it up. I think that's clear. So yeah, we agree. I agree with those 3 points. Everything you stated so far.
Okay.
And I would say I would definitely I agree with that. The one thing that I would maybe have a little bit of issue with is that you're saying that the argument is that we want to hold on to our uranium so that we can retort if Israel does something to us. And I would say that maybe part of it is the argument is that if we have this stuff, we have it's a deterrent from Israel, initiating a nuclear strike. So I'm just saying that I don't think it's necessarily.
I'm glad you brought that point up. Nice. I'm glad you caught that. Right. So now keep in mind, from the Iranian standpoint, is they already have factored in and know and feel in their heart that they are going to be nuked in this conflict because they knew they were going to be exacting, major damage to the state of Israel and to the assets around the region, and that, they anticipated that eventually that would mean that Israel's existence was being threatened and that she would retaliate using a nuclear weapon. So they already.
That's where I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
Well, bro, I mean, you're saying you don't buy that. I'm just saying that's what the facts. That's what's stated. That's what Iran has stated. That's their position. What I mean?
You said, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, can you repeat that last point? And I wasn't laughing at the claim. I was just laughing at your usage of when you refer to countries, with the feminine pronouns. That's so outdated to me. But can you repeat that last point?
So, you said what feminine pronouns you said?
Yeah, she, the great Babylon is like, it's biblical.
I mean, that's a whole nother, dive.
So you're saying that that Iran, and again, I'm not disputing this. I'm just asking because this is information I don't have. Are you saying that Iran is saying that they believe that Israel is going to launch nuclear weapons on them as a byproduct of what's going on right now?
Yes. When they war planned this out, they surmise that it led to Israel being pounded so hard that the retaliation would be a nuclear strike against them.
Okay, so that it could or that it would.
With that too.
That it would be when they war planned it out.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as obviously they feel threatened, the state is planning, but yeah, I definitely feel that they feel that Israel, which is the only nuclear threat in that region, will nuke them. Yeah, absolutely. Israel is
we're on the same page then. We're on the same page. So because of that, again,
So clarity, you're saying that you think that African agnostic, you're saying that Iran thinks that not that they could or that it's a threat, that it will absolutely happen, that Israel will nuke Iran.
I do feel if necessary. I think they will, but they.
So that's again. That's what I'm saying. It was qualified. If circumstances line up, there's no question. If circumstances line up, it'll be what it'll be. I don't dispute that.
I believe there's a swath of Iranians in position and power in government who believe they will, and the others who don't. They don't even have to believe that Israel is a military threat. Israel has been a military threat. And the United States too. So I don't want to just put it on Israel, but they know that Israel is, or the United States is operating through Israel. And they know what the United States has done since 1942. The U.S. has military boots on the ground in Iran. So I do think they believe that they're constantly under threat of invasion by the U.S. and Israel.
Yeah, but my position is still with this, salute to this person again, and not just because you agree with me. I'm just saying that, Israel is already taking a bunch of L's as far as the rest of the world. I'm just saying as far as, looking at them as an innocent or a victim. You know what I'm saying? That Israel has already sullied themselves. I mean, you can talk about history, but I'm talking about the whole Gaza situation, all this other stuff. What's going on now? This is a widely unpopular war that's going on. NATO, Trump was angry because NATO's not jumping in, and NATO's like, bruh, this is way out of line for you to be doing this. We're absolutely not going to co-sign or get involved on this stuff. I'm just saying that Israel would seem to be losing a whole bunch of allies and face over the globe. And I'm just saying that launching the nuclear war, not launching nuclear weapons, boy, that you have
to understand the Israeli mind is that, and from the Israeli mind, the whole world is against them, and everyone, hates them. You know what I mean? So they're not. That doesn't, impact them. You know what I'm saying? They're not worried about what you think, at all. You know what I mean? They're only worried about, what it is that they're trying, to accomplish. Which is to expand control of that region. The Greater Israel Project is what it's known as. They need parts of Iran. They need parts of Lebanon. They needed Syria. They needed it all. And the United States was okay with, allowing that to happen. And so, but yeah, so it sounds like we're agreeing on
100%. 100%. I 100% agree with this. Of course, Netanyahu provoked all of this.
I was just checking. Okay.
I mean, there's no question.
Okay.
Netanyahu. Look. I'm gonna put this picture up. This. Hey, I'm gonna give you a somewhat of a victory here, student X. We always put up this picture to emphasize that birdie is Israel and that rhino is the United States of America. But in this situation, that birdie's been whispering in the rhino's ear and has absolutely got the birdie dropping the bombs that did it and inserted this war. Netanyahu's forced influence over Donald Trump is 100% real, and I don't dispute that.
I'll give you a better analogy, and this is one that maybe our brother Afro will appreciate. You can use that same picture of the rhino and that representing the United States, but who Israel it would be is, instead of being a bird, they would be a parasite, a bacteria that is able to infect and destroy and kill that awesome animal, in a short period of time. That's what Israel is, to the U.S.
Israel don't have the power.
Unfortunately, they have a lot more influence, apparently. We're going to go into it. Let's continue. So, so where we left off. So now,
Happy Easter.
The last thing you left off was
no trust in negotiating with the United States.
They feel Israel will drop nukes on them.
Yeah, and then there's no trust in negotiating with the United States, because obviously, already having two groups of negotiators killed. And so, Iran is. Let me go to the next point. So the next point is
Iran right here. Salute to you, Soul Jahard 8560. I'm just saying, yeah.
I don't know if I disagree. On one hand, if it's interpreted a certain way, I agree, but I don't know what he meant by that exactly. But
I didn't even see what happened because I'm on my notes. What happened?
Oh yeah, no, because I'm just saying. I'm gonna put up a few of the comments. So since you haven't said, to give you a little bit of context. Sorry, this thing is not working very well for me. But here goes. So he goes. He loves this is your analogy about the chest, the 4D chest. But and I think you agree with this part right here, right?
Absolutely.
Then he goes out and he says that's why they're using cheap drones and attacking neighborhood construction. Exactly. That's that brilliant strategy you're talking about that's working.
Was it General Gott or Ho Chi Minh? Ho Chi Minh during the Vietnam War. He said, I can't remember the exact numbers exactly. He was saying, like, for every 1 man of yours that we kill, you kill 300 of ours. And he said, but mathematically, in the end, we will win. You know what I'm saying?
So it's just, he said the goal is to humiliate us like Vietnam, because we understand.
So that's a perfect segue to my next point. I'm glad you put that. It was a perfect segue because my very next point was Iran has been preparing for this war for decades. So they have a very deliberate tactics and strategy, and so far, man, it has been picture perfect. Started with using all of their old weapons, Let's get these old school cheap drones and missiles. Let's go ahead, do a little damage there and allow that strategy to eat up the more expensive, munitions that the Americans, Iranians would deploy, or Israelis would deploy, and then once we deplete that, then we'll start bringing in some of the new stuff. From the missile cities, they have 30 plus missile cities built throughout the whole country, and to where different segments fire depending on what they're detecting overhead. So even though they have these sophisticated radar systems that could detect and track, targets from, hundreds of miles away, they're not always firing on those targets until they come closer in the range. And also they're not firing them on them at times, just so that the positions aren't being given up, and so a brilliant long-term strategy is being deployed. If it wasn't brilliant, then we wouldn't be seeing the confusion, the chaos on the American side right now. Can we agree that this strategic planning for this moment, is a major strategic advantage for Iran?
I mean, look, this person, again, I'm gonna let you say your pace. You don't have to agree with it. I'm gonna let you make your comment, but I'm just saying that. The reality is he's saying that, Iran is, over 10,000 successful sorties and one down plane isn't Iran winning. I would argue that controlling the strait is Iran winning. You know what I'm saying? Iran still maintaining 60% rich uranium is Iran winning. If they put boots on the ground, there is no way that those soldiers are not getting massacred just because of, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying that he says that you can't be winning this. This war is not being won by the United States. The United States is a far more powerful, far greater military power. But the bottom line is you're not going to be able to take these fundamental things from them. I'm just saying that, it doesn't matter how powerful you are.
I missed it. So someone just put a comment up is what you're saying?
Well, he's been putting a bunch of comments up, but he was just talking about how, how basically saying that all these sorties, everything that the United States has been doing to them in one down plane doesn't mean United States is losing.
Okay, so he's getting pushback. Okay, let me address that. I mean, we're not talking about, first and foremost, one down plane. Just yesterday, right? Friday morning in Iran, a F-15 Eagle shot down, A-10 Thunderbolt 2 Warhorse shot down, 2 HH-60G Pavehawk helicopters, one crash landed in Iraq, recovered, and one was damaged, returned to base, they say. A KC-135 tanker destroyed. That was just yesterday. So first of all, we have to admit that we can't rely on American press or the president to give us any type of accurate information, in terms of what type of losses and damage that, America, Israel, and their allies, are sustaining. You have to go to other sources to even get that. So if you're not relying on other sources to see and try to authenticate, the damage and whatnot, then you're going to be behind in the times. But like I said, just yesterday alone, significant, damage, taking place. And then the other thing I would bring up on that fact is that, it's something about, especially all the movies that we watch here in America, it's something about having an American plane shot down and the pilot being down in enemy territory. It does something to the psyche of the American people. So just to shoot down somebody, now granted, these aren't the more sophisticated airframes. The F-35 a few days, before that was shot down, that was more sophisticated, but nonetheless is that having these airplanes down, even for World War I, if you're a pilot now and you're flying over the region and you thought you had complete air superiority, then now it's kind of like, like if you're on the battlefield and you're under heavy fire, you're not going to pop your head up, as often, right? If the coast is clear. You see what I'm saying? So now with these pilots flying, they're looking, for missiles coming at them, possibly getting hit, and they're missing other data, so the ineffectiveness of the theater is already compromised. Just for the fact that Iran has showed the capability that they could down you, and then they're showing it right now, So, how come these systems haven't been placed in before? Why are they bringing them out now? You know what I mean? Have they always been there? There's lots of questions there. Are they still being supplied? You know, and we're going to talk about my next point. But like I say, you know,
what about those missiles? What about these super expensive missiles that Israel and United States have been using that have been down by way less expensive drones? You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you understand that there's been military issues. It's just not an issue about this one plane. And again, it's very important if you're going to make this argument about what the United States is accomplishing. And again, you know, to me, this is not about shitting on the United States or whatever and stuff like this. This is about the fact that they're not taking the straight. They're not winning the straight. You can talk about one plane down, whatever, but I mean, Trump is saying that all of these, the U.S. was it UAE? I apologize if I got the initials wrong. But basically, all these bases that that these American bases over in the region. What happened to those bases, Student X?
Bruh, they're gone.
I'm just saying, yeah. How we can't just act like the United States is over there crushing. They're actually over there getting crushed because what agenda is being accomplished here? I'm sorry. I'm gonna go off a little bit to say that honestly, I really do believe that this war is going to be over in about 3 weeks. And the reason why it's going to be over in 3 weeks is because Trump is going to basically tuck his tail. He's going to fire everybody that's whatever, you know what I'm saying? He's going to spin this into a win because he knows that he can't accomplish anything more other. There's nothing else. This has been a public, a tragedy, whatever you want to call it. It's a publicity nightmare and just a logistic failure. So I'm just saying that's not going to change. At some point, he's going to have to cut his losses. And even though I think he's kind of a moron, you know what I'm saying? He's not that much of a moron that he's going to realize that, look, you know what? I got to worry about these midterms. I got to worry about, handing this off to the next generation of MAGA or whatever. The bottom line, he understands that this is just an L after L after L. So, bringing it back to,
that's perfect because the thing is that you gave a little pushback right here. So you're thinking the war is over in 2 to 3 weeks. So then that would be a reason of why we're not going to go nuclear, potentially, although it can't happen in that time frame. But so let's address that for a little bit. So does Trump seemingly have the ability or the authority to just stop the war, that he jumped in and essentially started? Does he could just like that turn it off? And let me answer that for you. No, just like he couldn't just start it just like that. It took a time frame to get all that equipment and resources into that region. So then what happened was once all that equipment was moved into that region, then it became economically not viable for anything less than an attack to take place because of all the resources it took to even put the machinery into that region, right? So there's other situations at play here that determines can Trump leave or not. The other part that determines if he can leave or not is the fact that the how he thinks of the American people will receive it. If he tucks tails and run, then that is political suicide for him because that's imminent defeat, even though he's going to say he won, say this and that and the other, it's going to be clear that it was not, a win, So for him to just pull back and just stop something that's already started, not only is it unlikely, but politically for him, it's not even viable. And then there's this point, which is that he can't quit if Iran don't quit because Iran's not quitting. Let me make that clear. Iran, in their leadership right now, and this is again a really important point to bring up, is that when I was bringing up that 60% enriched uranium, the reason why that part of the reason why the leadership would never give that up is that from the public and then again the leadership sentiment, the Iranian people will rip the president apart if they negotiated directly with the U.S. or gave up its leverage, which is this 60% uranium. The public, that is what is keeping the so-called regime, the government, intact, is that, the people are with this government, in its leadership. And a big part of it is what they achieve now to be able to, deliver a blow back to the aggressor if they were to harm, the people, in the way that nuclear weapons are able to harm today, because, nuclear weapons today, are not what they were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You can't go inside the building and maybe be able to have a little protection and whatnot. You're going to get burnt up a lot. So like I said, Trump doesn't even have the option to exit this war. Do you understand?
Of course, he always has an option. Just like Biden had the option to pull from Afghanistan. It was ugly, it was messy, it was whatever. But the bottom line is, you can literally just say, "All right, we're out," and that's it's basically that Seinfeld episode.
You can't do that. The buildup and all the equipment that's inside the region, and like I said, Iran is going to keep firing. They're going to keep attacking because they're not going to stop until. Let me bring up this important fact. That is got to be mentioned is that they have a 5-condition response. They being Iran. They said they need a complete halt to all aggression and assassination by the U.S. and Israel. No more strikes or targeted killing on Iranian leaders and officials. So the first criteria, let's say Trump stopped, and then got Israel to stop too, then that's only part of it. There's some other things that need to accomplish too. And
that's negotiation.
The second point.
That's a negotiation. That's a negotiation. That's negotiation. What you talking about? You talking about getting money back? You talking about getting money back? You talking about being recompensed? Is that what you're about to talk about?
No. The next thing is they want concrete mechanisms and guarantees in place to ensure that war is not reimposed on Iran in the future. What this means is not a deal. What Trump be talking about, a little deal that just for the next year or two halts aggression. They want a treaty. Something saying, recognizing their fundamental situations, the whole 9 yard official, the ways they're supposed to be done internationally. Which
they deserve that.
The U.S. has not shown willingness to do because they're breaking all type of international laws and Geneva Conventions and everything else. But they're saying they need a real life treaty in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. All right.
They deserve
then
it.
They said they need it. On top of that, of course, that's not going to happen right away. And this is something that can be negotiated: is a payment of war damage and reparations by the U.S. and Israel. Now
that's not going to happen.
So that condition, that's the one that gives me the most promise, because that condition could be just simply, if those other two objectives are met, then with that situation, it could be, remove Iran off your terrorist list and allow for their oil to be circulated and bought, freely, throughout the globe. You know what I mean? And I can see, to a degree, that being sufficient, maybe some, so of course,
just like lifting sanctions. I agree. That is a monetary
that can happen there. But those other two, is a real treaty coming out of this, which again, keep in mind that hasn't even came out the Russian-Ukraine conflict. What I mean? So it's not coming out of this anytime soon. Right. And so then they said that they want to end all the wars on all fronts, which includes the various resistant groups out there, Hezbollah. So they're saying Israel needs to stop attacking the Lebanon, stop attacking the Houthis, and the Houthis will stop. And then also the people of Gaza, need to stop being attacked by Israel, and then the true negotiations beginning with them, because that is where a big part of the conflict stems from, is that Palestinian issue. And then, of course, formal recognition of Iran's natural and legal rights to sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, as well as its nuclear knowledge. They want a peaceful nuclear program. They're not going to just, give up, all nuclear knowledge that they achieved and whatnot. They want to have a nuclear program. And then by no means are they giving up the ballistic missile program. So all those conditions need to be met for Iran to stop. Do you think that's likely?
No, all those things won't be given.
Those conditions are subject to negotiation. So
yeah, but there is a negotiation, because Iran does not trust America for negotiation. So these things are going to be done, in advance or through an intermediary, and the only capable, a person that could be an intermediate between these two groups, is not Pakistan. Guess who it is? Russia.
United States.
I want to say that I didn't get a chance. You kind of cut me off. I was saying the reason why I don't believe, because in actual war, their negotiations occur for tactical, strategic reasons. They could agree for another year or so just to buy themselves time to do X, Y, and Z to be better prepared for a war in the future. People do it all the time. So they may be a temporary ceasefire that they've been on and off. But getting back to because you laid out 5 points.
Well, let's stop right there. Before you go there, real quick, can I stop you real quick? Okay. Let's address that point because we can't go any further than that. Is that's not the case of what you just said. Iran is not coming to a negotiation table. They've had 2 sets of negotiators assassinated during negotiations. So the only type of negotiations will be through backdoor channels, and then action has to come about, from those backdoor channels to have things established, and then
look, you're looking at theory. Theory is also informed by practice in the reality around you. If militarily it is to their advantage to buy more time, they will negotiate.
For whose advantage?
So for instance, if you have me at a certain disadvantage now, let's say I'm 2-3 years out for my nuclear weaponization program, and I need to buy time so that I can build my weapon, as for example, then I will take a ceasefire just so I can get an advantage.
Bro. Iran's not doing that. That's what I'm saying.
This is what I'm saying. You are speaking from you based on your needs and your.
No, I'm speaking for Iran.
Hold on. What's the next?
Only Iranians speak for Iran. So,
bro, that's what I'm talking about.
To the next. So hold on.
That's what I'm talking about. So,
to the next. Let him make the point, and I agree with where you're going to go to the next, but let him flesh out the point, and then you can counter. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm saying only Iranians are able to determine what they want to do, and the leadership, they'll do that based on their needs. Like if the population is really very harming the population, and they do an analysis, and it will be to their benefit, not just in the intermediate, but in the long run to negotiate, they'll negotiate. That's just simple. People do it all the time. They retract, to get a strategic advantage. That's all. I don't see how anyone could exclude, like, this cannot happen. Like, they're this ironclad, non-negotiable people. Like, if millions and millions of their people are dying and can't have access to X, Y, and Z, of course, they're going to make some adjustments. I believe that in the long run, they're going to stick to their overall plan. But in war, you always do this. You always make adjustments and tactical changes.
Okay, go ahead. So next.
Yeah. So when I'm stating, the Iranian position is not, my position. It is, I'm taking a lot of content from people that matter within the Iranian government and chain of command, and those that, associate with said individuals, and then taking their summations and what they're saying, and then I'm consolidating it into, their policy, for our
audience. But they don't predict the future. What they're saying now isn't 100% predictor of the future as circumstances change through the war. I understand theoretically that's what they're saying. The propaganda that's coming out, that's what they're saying. But I'm just saying they're going to get an assessment of their resources and their capability and adjust the negotiation.
They already know their assessment. So when this happened,
ongoing, sir. It's not just one thing. It's ongoing assessments based on the circumstances that are the reality from day to day.
So in the art of war, Sun Tzu, and this is key because this is like some military philosophy 101, is that he compared the energy of a winning army to a round stone rolling down the mountain like 1,000 feet high. And so the logic is, once the stone is moving, it takes almost no effort to keep it going. But if you try to stop or make it hesitate, you lose the kinetic energy, and it takes energy to actually make it stop. You know what I mean? And it takes more fuel and resources to even get it back going, because you got to roll it back up the hill. You know what I mean? So again, where Iran's position is right now is that for them to win, they only need to endure. And then strategically, keep that
how do you endure, though?
Taken care of. What do you mean, how are they going to do it, bro? That's all their strategy. Their strategy is they're dug in. They're dug in. They're not coming back out until this is over. You know what I mean?
Okay, so this is I'm saying, like, I understand they're dug in theoretically, philosophical, Sun Tzu, art of war, and all of that. But I'm just saying the real day-to-day situation will determine what decisions they make. I just keep
so this is what I'm telling you. So let's look at the real day-to-day situation. So they have built the reality to where they could take multiple nuclear strikes and still have their chain of command and still have their offensive and communications, in sync with one another, to respond militarily. And on top of that is once they are hit with a nuclear weapon, then they have the ability to assemble within a week or two, actual delivery, the weapon itself, and place it on its delivery systems and then strike back Israel.
I understand that's their plan.
So that's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that they're not coming out of this because for them to stop right now when they have this momentum, then that allows the enemy to refuel.
Hey, listen, hold on.
The war was that chance. Then once they restarted it,
I'm not understanding.
I don't want to argue that point anymore. That's not the important point, though.
Yeah. I think it was an important point because it seems to me you're just saying like this is what they can do. This is a bullet in the chamber, and the student next seem to be debating whether that was.
It is an important point because if you're saying,
no. I think wait. It's a bullet in the chamber. I'm not predicting what they will do. They have an option to do a ceasefire for strategical reasons. Whether they're going to do it, we're not playing. We're not trying to guess that. Okay, so that's why.
You guys aren't. But what I'm saying is that strategically, it's a fact that that's not what they're going to do. This is to the end right now. Unless those other objectives come about.
You can possibly. Establish that.
I can't possibly do that, bro. I got you know how many quotes and then from their own military leadership and authority that will support.
How many times does a coach tell you something and do something different? I'm just saying that you got to understand that this is strategy. They're not going to put all the information out there.
I'm saying, you know how many rulers? Hold on. Do you know how many leaders?
It doesn't even matter that if the logistics create a situation where it's strategic for them to do it, they would do it.
Logistically, they are. Don't you understand that they're at their home?
I'm not saying they're logistic. I'm not
saying
they're in that position.
They're not going anywhere.
I'm not saying they're in the position to do that.
But what I'm saying is, look at their strategy.
All type of reasons why. Again.
Okay, hold on. Let's backtrack real quick because the initial thing he said was Iran is winning. We agreed because they control we define winning as controlling the Strait of Hormuz. They have 60% uranium
and uranium. Yeah,
the uranium. I don't know if that was necessarily against international law because Israel has it, United States, Britain, other countries have 60% enriched uranium. 3. They believe Israel will nuke them. I do believe they believe that. And Israel did provoke it. I mean, when I say provoke, the United States has been at war with Iran since 1979. We know that. But these recent escalations have been provoked by Israel and that Iran has been preparing and planning for this. I agree with all of that. But that to me doesn't mean nuclear war is imminent. I still haven't heard why or how because I haven't really heard that part. How is?
I mean, it's just like everything else. It's not like one or two reasons, right? There has to be a foundation set, and so everything that you're saying right now, that's a foundation. You know what I mean? Again, trust.
How does that translate to nuclear war, though?
When there's no direct negotiations, or even second or third party negotiations taking place in a war. That's not where you want to be, and those are the conditions for getting to end. So now it's required to have some type of intermediary, someone who could come in between. And the only one that the U.S. and Israel has is from a country that they're at war with, which is Russia. Right?
Hey, student next. I got a question for you. Yeah. What was it? Was it an 8-day war, 6-day war? What was the war?
12-day war.
12-day. I'm talking about the one that Trump. Recently, I'm not talking about like the original, like I'm
talking 12
days.
about 12 days.
12. Okay, so he had a 12-day war, and it stopped when the United States and Israel stopped bombing Iran. Correct?
It stopped when there was a negotiated situation that took place between America and Iran, which essentially said, hey, Israel came to America and said, man, we need a ceasefire. We can be hit bad. We got to stop this. So America, they negotiated ceasefire. Iran agreed to stop and then enter into negotiations, for a second time. after that point. But at that time, they took a more hardline approach because, remember the way, you got to remember how the 12-day war started. It started after Iran had a team of delegates, and they were making progress. Everyone felt that there was going to be some sort of solution that came about it. And then they went home that day. And the next thing again, the Geneva Convention war crime, the negotiators were struck, and killed. And so that's what started the 12-day war. And again, the 12 days, Israel getting beat up. They agreed to stop, but obviously negotiations, went a little different, but yet the same, because then the second group of negotiators were killed too. And then Trump even goes so far as to say that, hey, I don't even want to name anybody we're even talking to because they might get killed. And then, which inferred that Israel was going to kill them. So he was inferring that Israel was out there running rogue, and that America even had like no reins on Israel, and could not control, the decisions that, it was making.
They pull away that support, them reins will come snapping on pretty hard.
Yeah, but what's the likelihood of America pulling away support for Israel?
I'm saying, again, I think we all agree with your 5 points and the point you just raised now about the negotiations that, during the 12-day war that took place. And I believe that hardened Iran in their position. They dug in even more. Like, what's the use? I get that. But I'm saying, how do you extrapolate? How do you go from there to nuclear war? I'm not clear.
Well, we're not done. We're not done laying out the facts. Because so already we already talked about how. I
want to speed it up because I'm saying we've been on how long have we been?
Hours.
I want to get to me just because I think this can speed the process. Do you believe that Iran right now, when you say it'll be a nuclear war, do you mean like the United States or Israel bombing Iran, or they're bombing each other? Do you believe that Iran right now has nuclear weapon capacity right now?
Absolutely. Not only do they have it, but it's like I said, is that the way by them keeping the 60% enriched uranium to where even if they haven't made the weapon now and have been arming them on warheads right now as we speak, even if they haven't done that, then even after the struck, they have the ability to put together enough 90% enriched, uranium for about 10 to 11, weapons on their ballistic warheads. So they have enough material to deliver that right now.
If they had already achieved nuclear weapons, would it not be of greater? Would it not serve their interest more to basically just be like, look, we've already achieved nuclear. Now we're a nuclear power. We should basically have the restraint or the concerns about attacking a nuclear power deterrent type situation.
I'm glad you act that. This is why I wanted to do this format. This is why I wanted to do this format, because you guys are walking me right into the fact of how and why this is going to happen. So so the fact that they achieved that 60%, then right off the bat, that should have been enough to prevent this attack, because that shows that the nuclear deterrent is present, is active, and that, hands off Iran. And so the way Israel and the United States decided to do it is like, okay, well, we're going to just come at them, conventional weapon wise, let's see if we could deter them, further. But then guess what? That deterrent has not worked, because again, the country is so vast and the underground tunnels and networks, is so significant to where America and Israel aren't able to get to those weapons. And how do we know? Well, we know because even through all these strikes that have taken place over the last month, there have been no detection of any type of radiation or leaks taking place from anywhere in Iran at all. So it just like it wasn't, when Israel, and America had hit, except for if you want to look at, there was a civilian, some part of the civilian nuclear infrastructure that was touched, and I'm not sure that there was even leaks at that facility at all.
So would you say that key to your theory of nuclear war being imminent is the belief that Iran has nuclear weapon capacity right now?
That not only do they have it right now, but that America and Israel knows they have the deterrent in place, and yet that has not stopped them, in their actions.
that Kent guy, the Kent guy that stepped down, Joe Kent, whoever it was, he said that there was no evidence that they were, that there was no threat or no whatever, right? I'm saying
he's a spook. He's not coming out and giving everything. What Joe Kent's issue is that he doesn't want American soldiers to die, and to get sent to their deaths.
Honestly, I love that you said that, because I feel that disclaimer could be put on a lot of positions that you take as far as the sources of what people report. I mean, I'm just telling you, not everybody. People hold their hands close to their vest. You know what I'm saying? They don't put everything out there. So sometimes you get what is strategically out there for a purpose.
So, and then also, I don't believe that Iran is close to a nuclear weapon. And I guess my main reason, one, is that there is no history of the U.S. Bombing a country that has nuclear weapons, as far as I know, even though the United States is in opposition to that country, like Korea.
And wasn't the Ayatollah against that?
And then the other piece of evidence would be the Ayatollah being against that. And then thirdly, the international bodies that have come to Iran and done their due diligence and inspection, and they've concluded that they're only doing enrichment. And physicists, nuclear physicists and so forth will tell you that enrichment is a far, like almost light years away from weaponization and delivery. So, and enrichment, I think, is nothing wrong with enrichment as far as how you're using
power. Their whole thing was about, look, we want to be a nuclear power, not necessarily a nuclear weapon superpower, but a country that needs, takes advantage of. It's just a very efficient, power source. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I don't think so. That's key to I don't believe they have.
Let's address it. So let's address it, right? So first and foremost, nuclear science don't agree on that, and I sent you all, a guy, because, like I said, I don't just like pull, information, out the ether, and make stuff up. I rely on people who are smarter than me, especially in their field of operation, and their specialty. So I sent you all, Theater Postal.
Who could be lying or misinformed. Go ahead.
Say again.
I said, who could be lying or misinformed? I'm just saying. I
guess if you want to go by that, could be doing that. But like I said, someone who's respected.
I put a lot of respect on the information building process that you do. That these are reasonable resources. I'm just saying that, again, we understand that they're not gospel. You know what I'm saying?
People can make their own assessments in terms of that, But like I said, the people who I'm cherry picking from, there's a group of people, and then usually, I'll pick, a couple, to that I feel like has the most and the best intel to rely on the most. Theodore Postal, professor of science and technology and national security policy at MIT, is one of those guys, right? Expert in nuclear weapons delivery systems, missiles, and defense systems. Former scientific advisor at the Pentagon. Yeah, he's a guy that I'm gonna trust. And what it is that he's sharing. So he's already explained to us, that Iran operates as a nuclear threshold state, and it does not even require a pre-assembled nuclear weapon to establish a credible deterrent against Israel and nuclear strike. With their existing stockpiles, he said, and their hidden infrastructure, Iran can easily assemble and deliver a functional atomic weapon in a matter of weeks if its national survival is threatened. And then to your point, when you mentioned, Ayatollah's edict, is that first of all, the previous supreme leader was killed. Ayatollah Khomeini was killed. He's not here with us anymore. Right. And so then now there's a new Ayatollah and President, his son. And so then when you look at Iran, they look at their policy, that the edict, no nuclear weapon development under normal conditions are allowed. How under the same edict that his father had in place, it explicitly permitted action if the state's existence faces existential threat. Right. So they have the ability right now. They have the full site area, for the centrifuge cascades, their conversion facilities, the machining tools, is all dispersed and concealed throughout extensive underground network tunnels in Iran. But my last point, it doesn't take but 100 square meters of floor space to even put together, the weapon. You know what I mean? So it doesn't even take that much space. So like I said, just them having 60%, allows them to quickly, develop the weapon. And then, since they already have the delivery mechanisms, they have one of the most sophisticated ballistic missile programs in all of the world. They already have the delivery systems, so it doesn't take anything, for Iran to put it together. And the fact that they haven't did these nuclear tests again shows you, their demeanor is they didn't never wanted this war. They didn't start this war. They wasn't even trying to get nuclear weapons at all. They had the inspectors coming in and, inspecting their programs for years. And then only to have their scientists targeted and killed and whatnot. And at a certain point, after these negotiations and having their negotiators murdered, then they said, look, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And so now America has to rely on Russia, right, who they're at war with, to be able to inspect and let them know, if everything is good or not. And so again, these situations, are not, favoring, for, something bad not to happen. It's already here. American engineers, their military.
So who fires first?
They know that deterrent exists.
So who fires the nuclear weapon first?
Oh, but that's the most easiest of questions of all, right? And again, the same scientist, that we're talking about, he came out and said in his own strategic judgment that he said, based on patterns of behavior to date, Israel will be likely to first to employ nuclear weapons in any extreme escalation. Iran responses have appeared more measured by comparison.
So you have all this information about Iran having these nuclear weapons. Does Israel have this information?
Of course they do. Israel knows.
So you think that Israel believes that Iran is actually nuclear weapons capable right now?
They know that Iran has the ability to deliver a nuclear weapon on them. But here's
wait. The ability you're talking about. Wait, are you saying the ability to develop that or actually have it?
So right now, so here's what we don't know. What we don't know is if Iran has already developed them. I think they will be a fool not to. But I believe that because of their religious nature and the fact that they want peace. That they still have this material and it could still easily potentially be a bargaining chip, potentially. I know the hardliners don't want it. The citizens don't want it because they feel like this is a deterrent and was keeping them from getting a nuke and whatnot, and they don't want it. But I think that this still is potentially can be a bargaining tool, but they're going to need some very serious people in the United States, to come to the table, and make, Iran and the world know that, peace is something that the United States, is willing to really consider. Because right now, the United States and Israel, have showed their cards and that they want, Iran, its leadership, and the country. According to Trump, he says that he wants to bring them back to the Stone Age. And then based on what he was talking about destroying, which was civilian infrastructure, not military infrastructure, one could only imply that he was referring to all Iranians. And so that's what Iranians are seeing as well. So don't forget, we haven't got to that point yet, but the president's own rhetoric right here in the United States is also contributing to this fact.
Okay, so, I think they're very far from, the weaponization that they have. I think that.
But we don't, bro. What do you mean they're very far? What are you talking about?
You talked a long time. Let me.
I'm just trying to say. What are you saying? Are you saying that
he's about to explain
what we just got finished talking about?
He's not components. He's talking about being ready to fire something off. 60% is getting 60% to nuclear. Yeah. There's a bunch of steps. There's a bunch of steps.
So that's what you're saying. So you're talking about the 60% enriched uranium. So that's what I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you're saying that Iran, they're far off from being able to assemble a nuclear weapon, despite what the MIT scientist has stated. and others.
I have other MIT scientists telling me different. And just to be clear, I have other MIT scientists saying differently. That's why. But go ahead, Afro-agnostic. What was your point?
I'm going to say,
I'd like you to present it by the end of the show.
That could be
I presented a video in the chat already from MIT scientist. Go ahead, Afro-agnostic.
Yeah, I'm saying MIT scientists are they compartmentalize. They're looking at the capability. They're taking other things in consideration, but an MIT scientist does not necessarily deal with, as far as the infrastructure.
Reconnaissance. Reconnaissance. Yeah. If they're dealing with theory, they're not dealing with the reconnaissance of the infrastructure that's actually in place, the access to it, all these other things that are entailed. So again,
I don't know if you caught the nice guy, the video he put out about the 3 different hurdles that you have to jump over in order to have nuclear weapons ready for delivery. And the other thing too is that, to me, that
who put that video out there?
Nice guy.
Yeah. Where did I put it in?
You put it in the chat, in the group chat.
Yeah, in the Focus Up chat. Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So, because enriched uranium does not equal a nuclear weapon or nuclear capacity. What I'm hearing from you sounds more consistent with the propaganda that Israel puts out, that they're making a nuclear weapon. They're very close, and they use that to justify preemptive strikes to Iran. I don't think the state of Iran has said that they have nuclear weapons, and the international inspectors have not concluded that they have. And they bring with them scientists, top-notch, physicists, nuclear scientists with them. So I just don't. Your theory kind of falls apart if Iran, like you said, Iran doesn't have the capacity. And I don't think you've proven it. You just cited one scientist, one MIT source, and that's it.
So first of all, I don't even need to prove it, because the Epstein regime here in America is saying that they have the capability, and that
they're saying actually, what I mean? No, they're saying the Epstein regime is saying that 60% is buried and they can't reach it, and we're watching them. If they try to get to it, we'll do something.
Yeah, but I'm saying that isn't that what you're saying? We got 2 more hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, exactly. Watch the video. Watch the video. No, you're right. Can
you play the video?
I thought about it. I wish I could, but the bottom line is, if it won't upload because it's on my phone, so it's not the format. I'd literally have to. Yeah, I would love to. I've thought about it before. I apologize. I'll drop it in the comments in the YouTube video. You know what I'm saying? But again, I'm just saying that we should probably kind of wrapping this up, because I'm actually cooking in this shed here. But and for whatever reason, I'm wearing this thick ass lumberjack shirt. But hold
on, I didn't even get to Israel yet. You know what I mean? So
that's what I want to get to. That's what I'm trying to get you to.
So the last thing I'll do on the Iranian portion is Russia and China support. Is greatly enhancing the capability of Iran. They're targeting, their precision, their everything that goes into this modern warfare. China and Iran's direct help in this, using Iran as a proxy, if you want to look at it that way, has absolutely, given Iran a strategic major advantage, that they would not have had at all. So again, this is just something that, gives to their success in this campaign, which if Iranians having success and American Epstein regime military is not able to overcome and take care of any of their objectives, then by default, Iran is winning. They have to just endure, as many people have shared. Now, going to Israel, is that Israel, right from the bat, is that they never even officially confirmed and denied even possessing nuclear weapons. So we gotta look at that right now. So we actually, unlike Iran, who had weapon inspectors there recently, who knew about this uranium, they declared it and everything else. Israel hasn't done none of that.
It's kind of widely known and accepted. Israel does have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it is. But the fact that they have not disclosed that, they're already, then we can look at again, the mindset. The arrogance, and who the real threat is inside of that region, right? And this is why Iran is not eager just to give up any type of leverage they have to prevent this, a psychotic regime in Israel, from attacking them. You know what I mean? So they need to have a deterrent. And so, like I said, it's just unlikely that, whether they have access to it now or not, I believe they have easy access to it. And it's not stuck somewhere, and like I said, if they were smart, they would have dealt with it already, you know what I mean? But, that's a major situation. The fact that if you look at Israel's stockpile is that they have, from what people estimate, about 90 nuclear plutonium-based booster fission, nuclear warheads. You know what I mean? Right now, and maybe another 100 to 200 additional weapons, and as far as their delivery systems, their nuclear triad, they have air, which is their aircraft like F-15s and F-16s, which is why they're getting shot down because any of those could deliver a nuclear payload. By land, they have the Jericho series ballistic missile systems, which are not ballistic. They just added that on there. And then
do you think the United States?
Ooh, you start breaking up on me bad. I didn't hear anything you said.
Kind of close up. I'm gonna just flow until he.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I was just asking you a yes or no question. Do you think the United States is going to launch nuclear weapons at Iran?
No, it would come through Israel. It would come through Israel. But the United States does have assets in the region that have nuclear weapons, arsenals.
So you're not saying.
In your doomsday scenario, Israel starts this nuclear war with Iran, and then Iran responds with nuclear response. That's what you're.
So yeah, my doomsday, if you will, the way that this will get started, it doesn't mean that it's like a automatic chain reaction, a sequence of events simultaneously. But yeah, Israel, I would agree with. Mr. Postal, that it would be Israel that would absolutely, be the one who to get this jumped off and started off. Why? Because my goodness, I believe that they're trying to be the superpower in the world. Brother Yusuf, he's told us this. That Israel wants to pit all the other major powers against one another, have them destroy themselves, so they end up being on top. In the region to where, that they would dominate since now U.S. assets have been eliminated, from the Gulf altogether, and then if they get Iran neutralized, eliminated, then Israel has full reign to that whole entire region. And what some say is that many of the elites here are going to leave here, and go out there, essentially.
You feel that the United States territory, the jurisdiction, the actual, country will be impacted by a nuclear bomb as well?
So what I'm saying is that, okay, it could be. Absolutely. There are all types of scenarios to where how this is. So the thing is that
do you think we understand the possibilities, but do you think that?
Bro,
I mean, look,
clarify that a little more. So you're saying then that will be from Iran? Iran has that range right now?
No. Okay, so you guys give me a lot, you know what I mean? So let me address it here. So first of all, will United States itself launch from the U.S. mainland a nuclear strike on Iran?
No. I'm saying, will the United States be impacted by a nuclear bomb from Iran? You believe they have that?
No, Iran doesn't have the desire or the capability that we know of that has a intercontinental ballistic missile that has the range that can reach all the way to the United States. You know what I mean?
So your nuclear war being imminent is just something that will take place between Israel and Iran.
So you're catching on now, you know what I mean? Because
honestly, I didn't know.
What I did say was global thermonuclear war, but
all I heard was the war. This is like literally a first that I'm seeing that you're basically saying that this is just going to be a regional, local.
But that's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it imminent? Yes, but then what I'm saying is that initially it could start off in that region and expand. And it could be in seconds, days, weeks, that expands, I don't know. But then let's game theory it out, if you will, right? So Israel attacks Iran. Now, the first question becomes, okay, well, what assets are they using? The F-16s, the F-15s, those are getting shot down. You know what I mean? So they probably would use some sort of sea-based, type of scenario, right? Where they're launching missiles from a submarine. So just the launch of nuclear missiles that right now Russia and China are tracking, just a simple launch of it, these other nations had to analyze in seconds. In fact, they had to already do some pre-analyzation of what is their response in that situation. And that's where we have a lot of unknowns from. But as soon as we have countries willing to deploy nuclear weapons into the theater of combat when they were the aggressor, then all bets are off. So the thing is, it doesn't matter if what I'm saying is a fact, and it is my opinion. My whole point is the same point as our brother, that we've had on the show, is that is we should prepare. We should prepare, for this being a likely scenario. I'm not gonna get into like all the TV shows that they're pumping us with right now. Fallout. Everything, that's talking about underground bunkers and a paradise, we're not gonna talk about all that, but, like I said, the possibility, as soon as we have nuclear weapons being able to be deployed, we Fukushima impacted us here in the United States, in particular in California, right? And that was a meltdown at a power plant. So the detonation of a nuclear weapon anywhere on this planet for especially this reason, a nation that wasn't even attacking anyone, that was attacked, that then enters the equation for there to be responses,
If a nation launches or detonates a nuclear bomb on this country, that country will get wiped the F out.
Wait. You said on this country?
I'm saying if whatever little country decides to do whatever, I understand that China and Russia will be a different story, but I'm just talking about
what does it matter?
Iran is not going to matter.
What does it matter? What you're talking about at that point is global thermonuclear war. You know what I mean?
But that's the thing about it. It won't be. It's little country. We always talk about, like, for example, one of the big arguments is that Iran is a big sponsor of terrorism that impacts the United States. If they create, if they get this weapons grade, enrichment up to nuclear bomb capability and pass that off to one of these crazy people that are basically will use this to do a weapon in the United States. Now, granted, a missile will be extremely problematic for them to get together.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen like that, bro.
It'd be like a dirty bomb. It'd be like a dirty bomb, which is nowhere near the type of yield of a nuclear weapon. But if this gets tracked to some particular country that gets doing this, they're going to end up being a crater. And I'm just saying that I'm not saying that people aren't crazy enough to do that stuff. I'm just saying that they're extremely motivated to not.
Like I said, so the people these governments can say whatever they want to say to justify their actions, but again, you can't just start launching nuclear warheads intercontinentally without that being a problem, right? So the way that it would happen, to your conspiracy theory earlier, if there was a false flag here, it could be a dirty bomb in a major city like LA or somewhere, then and blame it on Iran. Now we could justify, and get the American people, okay with it for us to go ahead deploy, nuclear, weapons. But like I said, the thing is that what we can't, leave out, the fact is how important Iran is to both China and Russia, and so China and Russia, I don't think is, going to be, going to allow this to take place. And
what's going to be more important to China and Russia?
What's that?
China and Russia.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that it's one thing for you to be mad about them bombing these people that bomb them. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole nother self to put yourself to the absolutely holocaust of the planet. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that there's great nuclear deterrence in mildly responsible, sensible people that understand life. I understand that you have religious zealots and people that'll wear bombs and you have all of this stuff. But usually the people at the highest people, those people tend to be much more practical, understanding that they're just not going to be throwing it all away.
Yeah, so, I'm not convinced that nuclear war is imminent. Only if Iran had nuclear weapons, which I don't outside of an MIT professor who says that they does, I don't really, feel that they do. So I don't really feel that
it should be a deterrent.
That's because you're on emotions. You're on feelings.
War has
actually, it's rational. I think he's making a rational decision.
And that's not rational.
I think
because the rational thing is that right now I can tell you how to put together a simple gun design of a nuclear weapon. You take a sphere of highly enriched uranium. You have 2 plugs. Small conventional explosions are placed there. The explosive dry plugs.
It's a very precise geometry. Very precise.
You know what I mean? It'll be like about 15 kilotons. No nuclear test needed.
Hold on, pause.
You know what I mean, bro? This is like Iran has the technical knowledge to put this together, put weapons together that can be delivered to Israel right now. They have.
Listen. Student X.
Only 9 countries. Hold on. Only 9 countries have it. Okay, it's not that easy as you claim to put it together. Enrichment of a uranium. I can actually enrich some uranium in my own house. I used to have a centrifuge. That's not the problem. But going from there to the other 2 hurdles, I think that's a lot of technology.
That's not a problem for Iran. For me and you.
If it was a Student X, if they already had it, what would be talking about having 60%? They'd be saying they already have it. That would be the argument. No. Trump would have every motivation in the world to be like, they already have this. Now we got to stop.
But they've been telling you that. They're telling you that they're 1 to 2 weeks away from it. It's telling you they have it. And what I'm saying is that assessment now is absolutely true. It is true. You know what I mean? So, and they know it's true. And so, but then again, they're still attacking this country that has a nuclear deterrent that right now, they could have in this month already enriched uranium, already put it on delivery system, already
nuclear deterrent.
They don't want to.
Did you say nuclear deterrent? Because that basically implies that they're not there yet.
No, they have a nuclear. I'm saying Iran has a nuclear deterrent right now, and not only am I saying that, but like I said, there are others who are saying it as well too.
I'm gonna start because I haven't been talking a lot, have I? I feel like I'm gonna start from a different perspective. Do you agree the closest that we've ever gotten to a nuclear war is the Cuban Missile Crisis? You agree to that, right?
I totally disagree with that. Just on the close of this, the previous administration, we were absolutely, just as close, if not closer, than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Just to close out, this
during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. was at DEFCON 2. I don't know of any other instance where the U.S. was at DEFCON 2.
Yeah, they were officially at DEFCON 2. There's no doubt about that. That's simple. So making an adjustment, on your clock. But like I said, that doesn't change the reality.
I'm saying that's the metric that they use in terms of military preparedness for nuclear war. They've never gotten that close. That's the closest they've gotten. Cuba had missiles right there, 90 miles away from the United States. There was a threat. There was a negotiation. They took some missiles out of Turkey. And Russia agreed to take it out of Cuba.
Right, I remember.
Negotiated, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, with this situation here, there's no history of the United States bombing a nuclear power. The United States, the nuclear wars. Where are you getting this information from? Because it seems that it just seems to be associated with this war. And I'm not saying
when you say information, what information?
That nuclear war is imminent. Because there is plenty of information out that nuclear.
So you're saying that. So you're saying that we were really close, but for whatever reason they didn't want to actually use the DEFCON thing.
So again, what I've been laying out are
I'm asking you a question, Student X. Before you do that, I'm gonna let you do that. I'm just asking you. So you're saying that we were that close, but for whatever reason they didn't make any DEFCON adjustments.
First of all, the DEFCON adjustments and getting information out to the public, the last 2 administrations, arguably 3, but I felt Trump was better in the first time around, but the last 2 administrations have done a terrible job of informing the American people on anything, let alone, where we're at in terms of potential nuclear, war, in the world. You know what I mean? I just miss like the fact that just because officially that we didn't have a report that the military or the nation had adjusted our DEFCON status. What the government does not do is inform the people on damn near anything. That is not in my package.
That's more of also information to the military for military preparedness. So I'm saying that information has to get out in order for the United States to be militarily effective. And I just interesting because I want to know the source of it because
so now DEFCON, how the DEFCON system works.
I'm saying most of the people that are against nuclear war are on the left. They're liberal. They are big for nuclear disarmament. I never really see right-wing people support that. They maintain the desire for U.S. to have military dominance and to keep and to not participate in the proliferation treaties and so forth. But now I see this urgent, like the war is happening right now. I think it's kind of simplistic with this particular war when we know the best thing to prevent nuclear war is disarmament, but I don't see the same people behind this. So to me, it seems a little like warmongering, fear-mongering, and a lot of media that is trying to get attention because if you say war is imminent, fear, blah, 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 you're going to get more attention, get more hits. And also you're able to sell things on the notion of helping people be prepared, even those things that really wouldn't even be effective or practical if you're outside of the blast zone. So I just don't understand why this. I haven't heard enough evidence to say it's imminent right now.
Yeah, like I said, it's not my job to convince someone, right? But in terms of my justification for coming before us today saying that it's imminent is not money motivated. There's no type of monetary gain I'm going to get from disclosing this information, arguing this point at all. It's simply out of just love for people, and then also for the fact that I'm trying to get people to really recognize where we're at, because there is a duty that we have in our various countries, no matter where we're at, but particularly here in America, to hold these politicians accountable, for the decisions that are being made, the whole 9 yards, and in terms of it was just addressing that DEFCON system. The DEFCON system, my understanding, impacts America being struck, itself. So when I've been talking about, these nuclear strikes, even with this last situation, with the administration, is that look at it from Ukraine and Russia. So Ukraine, Russia, if there being some sort of exchange there. And exchange there, Russia would, if they had a nuclear weapon coming from Ukraine attacking Russia, Russia would immediately retaliate, not just against Ukraine, but also continental United States as well, because they would figure that attack came and was ordered from continental United States. And then, unlike the Cuban Missile Crisis, is the technology and the delivery systems and the yields of these nuclear weapons are much greater, so being as far as Russia, which isn't that far when you really look at the globe, and then, hitting the U.S. is not something that is, it takes very long, or for those weapons to even get here. You see what I'm saying? So I was to address that. And there's something else that you had mentioned, in terms of, we talked about the DEFCON. What else? Is there something else that I didn't cover that you brought up?
Honestly, I feel like we've exhausted enough. I mean, my real question was about, why would Israel launch it? Just because, there's going to be terrible fallout if they do that.
Why would Israel launch it? Let me ask you this: why would Israel put a bunch of Palestinians in concentration camps? And treat them ill and create?
But because they're able to do that and still maintain a certain quality of life. There's certain things that you do. You can't do those things and maintain a certain quality of life.
How's it quality of life right now in Israel? Well, how's it going for them?
how do you think he's going to be once nuclear weapons come involved?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is that when you're dealing with a genocidal, psychotic people,
I'm not
like
going to call.
Israelis,
I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
I'm going there. You know what I mean? Because it's clear.
But he's saying that they may be genocidal and homicidal, but they're not suicidal.
Yes, but I tell you what. If they, like any good criminal, and bad guy, in any of the comic books and things you read, they always had this demeanor, to where if they couldn't have it, no one can have it. Type of deal. And that's how I see Israelis. You know what I mean?
That's usually how the other side sees that. That's generally the argument that the other side makes of the other person. I mean, that's really
kind of. We're not seeing that with Iran, because Iran is taking a position.
Is Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens? Are they promoting the idea that nuclear war is imminent, or is that just coming from you? What other sources are promoting this idea?
Bro, I mean, when you say other sources, I like the question. I like the question about. I like specifically the question about Candace and Tucker. Are they saying that?
I don't know who's out there. This is something that was on my mind.
I know, but I'm saying, but you haven't. You've been studently observing their posts. They haven't said anything about this.
No. What I've been doing is collecting data.
I know that. That's not the question. I'm just asking. I understand why you've been doing it. I'm not saying that. My question is, has Candace or Tucker been talking about this? Like we're headed for.
Tucker has talked about nuclear war on his platform. I'm sure Candace. I'm sure she has too.
But
this is any real person has a concern about this.
To the next. That was a lot of dancing. You gave me everything I wanted. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I had to think about it because I was like, "Is there anyone else out there, talking about?"
Because that was his question. And he asked, and he goes, "Look, have they been doing it? Have they been doing it? Whatever." So if their position that everybody's been doing it.
To me, that seems like an ulterior motive for them to be promoting that, because none of those people are into nuclear disarmament. They're not promoting the idea.
Tucker is.
Who's not into nuclear disarmament?
Tucker is. I've been watching. Recently, Tucker is big time.
Anybody that's concerned about this is for nuclear disarmament.
The people that are primarily concerned with that have been liberals and people on the left.
Primarily, historically, that's an absolute fact.
That was the point you brought up.
So my thing is, to me that makes it, it's not really a concern with nuclear disarmament itself. It seems to be more of a way to just get attention and to sell things. So that was my concern, because I don't know of any other sources that are, except for maybe propaganda from Israel, because they want to, preemptively strike. But I don't know of any other sources supporting the idea that they have nuclear capacity.
Bro, so like I said, I just shared one with you, just one, right there alone. But then, like I said, so the whole thing becomes is that you have to start looking to the nuclear science community at that point, and for them,
that's what I was doing. That's why I posted that video.
60% enriched uranium that Iran has, given their scenario, because the thing is, it's not secret. It was public. They were under inspection. Information is available, and no one these agencies at that time knew their capabilities, knew their infrastructure, knew of everything, and so given that reality, then no one debates that I know of. And if you're saying that you have someone that's going to debate that, it would take, this extreme leap for Iran now to develop a nuclear weapon. I don't hear anyone making that argument. Most people say that now, based on where they're at right now, it's not an extreme leap. It is something they could do. Iran knew they could do it, and they did it because it was a bargaining chip. The whole thing was, hey, here, we've done this, we achieved this. Now let's come to the table. Let's come up with the framework to where you all can leave us the fuck alone.
No, that's not true.
That was Iran's strategy and plan. I would have did it a little differently, but they were a little self-righteous. I feel like
that's not quite true, though. I'm saying international bodies have reached that conclusion also, that they do not have nuclear capacity right now. So it's not just, you're actually the outlier, and whoever Candace putting out this information, and the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer and all that developed, the first atomic bomb here, and the first people to use the atomic bomb here from the United States. But that doomsday clock comes from the Manhattan Institute. And that doomsday clock has not changed before February 28th or after February 28th. So it just seems like this interest.
I'm not looking at a clock, to determine that for me. I'm a free thinker. I get my own intel, my own data.
Let him in closing, Afro-agnostics, please allow him to say what he needs to say without interruption. Please, student X, I will give you a final say to retort.
Yeah, so
I need you to let him speak, okay? Please. All right.
The DEF CON metric hasn't changed, and the doomsday clock established by experts in this area hasn't changed. The doomsday clock, the scientists behind it have not given any revelation that they think Iran has nuclear capacity. So I'm saying, like, this concern with nuclear war being imminent seems to be coming from the right side of the spectrum. And it seems to be it's a fake interest or concern, because these are the people who are not really behind this armament, which is kind of like, when you have a lot of gun violence, the best way to get rid of that is to get rid of guns. And the best way to get rid of the threat of nuclear power is to get rid of nuclear weapons. There's no threat to nuclear weapons if no one has nuclear weapons, but they don't seem to be behind that or have any concern about that. But suddenly, they're concerned about an imminent threat of nuclear, whatever right now. It just seems to me to be propaganda, sell products, get media attention. And it doesn't really seem to be coming from a legitimate source other than right-wing pundits.
So thank you. The DEF CON system is a private internal system used by the United States Armed Forces, right? And guess who manages that and decides on where the DEF CON pace is, or what number it's on?
I would think ultimately it would be the president.
And the Secretary of Defense, right? Through the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I don't know if you know who these individuals are right now, what I mean? But the Secretary of Defense, they're calling it the Secretary of War these days. So if you have confidence in these individuals that you're going to get any type of readiness conditions that's accurate, from them, good luck to you. And as far as the doomsday clock, to me, that's always been more legitimate, if you will, because it is, run by a nonprofit, based organization out of Chicago, and it has different, people on there, but, there has been, when I say different people, different scientists and things of those of that nature, and, so I definitely like that one better. But again, in terms of, or me like relying solely on any of those two systems, when we have today immediate access to some of the top scientists and minds who publish their ideas and their thoughts on a daily basis on various forums, that we can access in real time. I just taken the time to put together people who I trusted through the years that has been, a reliable and proven, and that, that I'm utilizing, so people could do what they like.
Seems to be an MIT scientist and then Tucker Carlson, but I'm just saying I really have.
No, he does more than that.
The biggest.
I love, so with Tucker, I love who Tucker brings on his show. For sure, great interviews. The MIT science I cited earlier, wasn't just any MIT scientist, but highly distinguished, highly trusted. Let me ask you this: what's a known patriot? What's the
biggest existential threat, though? Honestly, in your opinion, I just kind of because I don't think we're going to reach a full resolution, but at least we can establish some agreements and disagreements.
I think the cases have been made. The cases fully been made on both sides.
Y'all this real quick, just to get. What is the biggest existential threat right now? Nuclear weapons? I guess I know student next answer, or climate change.
No, I would say not the way you're saying climate change, but I would say a climate manipulation, and then I will put nuclear weapons, right behind that, and nuclear. War, right behind that. But climate manipulation, being number one, and then in nuclear war.
Okay. And I think so. As far as the political spectrum, what forces are? I'm sorry. Let me get your view on it, nice guy.
of course, it's going to be climate change.
Okay. What, on the political spectrum, what forces are really pushing to implement those things to prevent climate change?
I mean, I get where you're going. I mean, you're right. The left is the one I've been saying that the reason why I've been voting, even though I didn't identify as a Democrat, even though I did identify as conservative, even though I identified as right of center, I still was basically voting towards the left because I was dealing with the science, climate change, stuff like that. You're right. The right is really not checking for that. The right is telling you that the sea levels aren't rising, that all of that.
But at the same time, you're fear-mongering right now. Oh, it's imminent threat.
If you guys are worried about sea level rising over, some, nuclear war, then that's on you. Your level of preparedness.
Sea level rising is just in a demonstration of the fact how climate is being impacted. You've already conceded that climate manipulation.
It's funny because
you've already argued that climate manipulation, climate alteration is the number one threat. So there's really nothing else.
Climate change is different from what I'm talking about. What you're talking about, is in climate change, that's like your Greta Thornton or whatever her name is. You know what I mean? You're on that tip. You know what I mean? I'm on the fact that there are scientists using the manipulation of weather, and putting chemicals, inside our atmosphere, creating and engineering and steering storms and things of that nature. That's what I'm referring to. So I'm sure we're talking about two different things.
Yeah. So that having been said, I think this is a good time to I want to put this comment up here. Okay. So this says, what is this channel about? If you talk about the Focus Up channel, the Focus Up channel is about, Black media. Again, we speak to all people, you know what I'm saying? It's not just an issue of Black people, but we do have Black interests, Black perspectives at heart of it. But this particular show, this is Objective Deconstruction. This is an amalgam, basically a combination of two different shows. Yeah, of two different shows. We got Mutant Politics that really attacks politics, and then we have Objective Deconstruction, which really attacks positions. So that's what it is. So, primarily Objective Deconstruction is a show about deep diving particular positions and basically, exposing them, breaking them down to the most simplistic thing to force a person to one position or the other. That's what Objective Deconstruction. Mutant Politics is really about addressing and bringing up, relevant things that, affect us globally, that affect us locally, but basically, real impactful political things that are happening that, that have effect. That basically correct, Mr. Student X?
I think you get a great, summation of things, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So what we have is a melding going on in this particular show, and we may do this, some more times. You know what I'm saying? This might be not the only team up, but the bottom line is, that's what this show is about. So if anybody,
Charlie Kirk topic, it sounds like that's going to be a thing. You know what I mean? And don't make me get on climate manipulation. Don't make me get on that one.
That show will get destroyed in Objective Deconstruction. But hey, I'm your Huckleberry.
That sounds like a challenge.
That having been said, we've seen a lot of engagement, a lot of comments. Some stuff's been hostile, some stuff's been not. But at the end of the day, it's been good information. Trust me, there was some stuff I wanted to push back onto, but I didn't want to undermine the speaker that was speaking as we're posting those comments. But that having been said, look at those comments. Give those comments. If you want us to talk about something in particular, reach out to us. You know what I'm saying? So we appreciate it. Thank you very much. That having been said, peace out. Thank you, fellas, for participating. It's been a great